Great to see all of you here. Thanks for coming to the panel. As Oliver mentioned, we're going to talk about ad monetization and really get into some of the do's and don'ts and talk about the opportunity at hand. I think 2015 is a great time for ad monetization. We've matured a lot in our industry. A lot of the tech has matured. There's great IAB standards that have been adopted by the ad networks to make sure that behind the scenes the technology is working and is consistent and measurable. And at the same time, we're seeing brand spend increase. We're seeing continued spend on user acquisition. And I think we're seeing a lot of user acceptance. Users are getting used to the idea of seeing ads here and there to help pay for the experience, or volunteering to watch ads in order to gain currency or coins or virtual goods. So it's a great time for this topic. So quick note on myself. So as Oliver mentioned, I'm at HyperMX. We're a New York-based company focused on brand advertising. So we bring Fortune 500 brand videos to mobile games and apps. Benefits there being that you're not advertising other games that might be competitive with yours, and we're also driving really high payouts because major brands are starting to really be willing to pay a lot to advertise on mobile. They're becoming comfortable with it. But with me today, I've got some great folks that I work with and that are veterans of this part of the industry. So we've got Olivier from Wooga, Albert from Social Point, and Peter from Miniclip, and Oliver from TinyLoot. I'll let them introduce themselves really quick and just tell you a little bit about what they do in their roles and the kind of games they have, and then we'll dive into some questions. And throughout the time, if there's any questions in the middle of it, something that doesn't sound right to you, or you want to say we're crazy, please raise your hand. Albert?
So, well, my name is Albert. I work for Social Point as a live ops manager, and I'm responsible for monetization in the game as well as live ops operations and advertising with ads and offer wall. I don't know if you know Social Point, but we have like two main games which are like Dragon City and Monster Legends. And Dragon City has like more than 35 million users a month, and Monster Legends kind so. So we're quite big in the business, and we're doing pretty well. So.
Goedemiddag allemaal, which means good afternoon in Dutch. I think it's important that someone says something Dutch on these panels because it's only in English. I'm Pete, as you can see, Pete from Miniclip. Miniclip's biggest game is 8-ball pool multiplayer, but we have a few other titles as well, including Soccer Stars. My role at Miniclip is twofold. On the one hand, it's the advertising monetization, not just for the website, but also for the mobile titles that we have. I drive an ambulance in my free time.
You're late.
But I'm also responsible for the user acquisition for Miniclip's mobile titles.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Olivier, working at Wooga. I'm leading at Wooga all the in-game advertising solutions for both desktop and mobile. And currently, our main titles are Jelly Splash and Prosperil. And we have a third big titles coming end of the month, which is Agentalis and other hidden object games. And
yeah, I'm Oliver from TinyLoot. I worked as a consultant for many years, helping mobile game companies be successful in marketing and also help them understand what to do with regards to monetization. So I'll also try to add some value.
Great, thanks guys. Okay, so we're going to start with what Pete said is the hardest question. So I'm going to start with him on it and make him answer first. So getting right down to it, this is a game developers conference, right? This is a place where people care about the spirit and the truth in games, if you will. And finding that balance between user experience and monetization is an ongoing battle. And so with ads, that is a specific battle that everyone needs to wage and decide where they want to be on that sides of the extremes. So I guess the question for you guys is, how do you find that sweet spot? What are you guys doing to make sure that you're not losing users, but at the same time you're not leaving money on the table?
It's an impossible question because there are so many different types of games and so many different types of experiences. It's really about thinking very carefully about the game that you have, the core monetization loop. And then as part of the planning process, really thinking very carefully, how can we naturally, comfortably add advertising into this. There's a whole bunch of do's and don'ts. I mean, do not ever interrupt a user when they are playing the game. Don't show them an interstitial, only until it is at a very natural point. You know, it has to be really very clear for a user, for example, if they do gain currency from watching videos, what it is that they might be able to do with that and how they can get there. But other than that, when it comes to you as developers and when you are looking at your game, it's really very carefully about implementing things and then testing to see what works for you, because what works for us may not necessarily be something that works for you guys.
And Oliver, for instance, you've worked with a lot of different game companies and helped them with this process. Is this something that you think about in the alpha stages, in the early design stages, or is it usually okay to kind of wait towards the end to put in the different ad strategy based on do you want to build the game with that in mind, or do you want to see what you have at the end and then put the ad strategy around it?
I think it's important to it's becoming I mean, we had that in some of the discussions today already. It's becoming a more and more viable revenue source. So that means that you should also think about it quite early on, and you have to find good placements, not interrupting, as Peter said, the gameplay. Actually building things in where people actually are willing, open, etc. to advertising, giving them the choice of, okay, you can get this continuously for free, but you have to then watch ads. These experiences help acceptance, create acceptance, and also can drive a significant amount of revenue. But you have to find those things, and you have to. I think it needs also a game designer to actually accept that this is a viable part of the game experience. So I mean, I was working just recently with a team who launched All Guns Blazing, and there, it's a shooter game, but you die. Okay, it's like Time Crisis on a phone. But there you could actually go to like a drive-in cinema, and you could watch some videos to kind of revive. And that was actually really the only viable way to kind of get back into the game quite quickly, by watching not only one, but you needed a bit more videos. And that worked really well. It's part of the game, and then it fits. Right. And it's not just somewhere hidden in an offer wall. I think that was also is also quite interesting. Yeah,
it might be interesting if each of you could just say really quickly your biggest game, the type of game it is, like how you would categorize it, and then what percentage of your revenue, just in a ballpark, doesn't have to be exact, do you expect that type of game to generate for you? Is it 5%? Is it 50%? And again, maybe don't talk about the specific game, but in general, like when you talk about big genres, what do you think in today's day and age with the technology where it is, what can you look or strive to generate?
Okay. So to speak about our biggest game, which is Jelly Splash, Wooga has the strongest focus on in-app purchase. So the question about adding ads without harming the user experience or the retention is obviously key, but on the same time, so we usually work on the development process. We used to work on the development process, focus on retention, on in-app purchases, and then we discuss more about in-game advertisement, which is something, as Oliver and Pete mentioned, are a bit changing as we are trying to push the reasoning and as implementing the planning of in-game advertising much earlier in the development process. Because we think that it's more and more feasible to add a good amount of money, a good amount of in-game advertising without harming this user experience. And to do that, I mean, I can't tell you if it's 5, 10, or 15%, because it all depends on the game, all depends on also our audience. But we really think that with opt-in videos or with pushing relevant interstitial at the right moment, as Pete said. We won't push interstitial at the middle of a Jelly Splash game, but between two levels, for example, it doesn't harm the user experience, and it's also bringing good added money.
Yeah. Albert, how about you?
So basically our main game is Dragon City, but some of the best implementation or best practices are made in Monster Legends, so I might talk about both. Okay, but right now video ads and offer wall represents or give us an extra 20% in revenues. And basically what they said, referring also to the last question, I think video ads or advertising on mobile has to be something that the user may want to watch, not something that you're putting there intrusively. It's something that they may want to watch just to improve something in the game. I mean, the game has to be, and the in-app purchases have to be the main business, and this has to be like an extra revenue for it.
Gotcha. For our game, 8-Ball Pool Multiplayer, there's two main advertising loops. One is offer walls. Like them or hate them, they still drive a lot of revenue. And the second is incentivized video. We're very, very carefully thinking about the same question that everyone else is, which is about interstitials and to what extent we want to use interstitials as a way of monetizing the 99% of users that don't engage with in-app purchases. And that's not a stat from Miniclip, by the way. That's just a random number. But for 8-Ball Pool, we make between 10 and 20% of our revenue from advertising. Yes.
I think it very much depends also on the game and genre. I mean, I will just talk about things that I've heard today because I've been here all day. There were, I mean, Martina from FGL was saying for her games it's 50% coming from advertising. So yeah, she clearly thinks a lot about where can I place advertising in a reasonable way and make good revenues from it while still retaining users as ever much as possible. So it depends very much on the genre. I mean, there are some very, very hardcore games where you will not see any ads whatsoever because they just don't rewarded videos maybe, but anything else people would almost see as any display ad they would see as an intrusion
are
to
any
the game
of you
experience.
running banner ads anymore? Banners anywhere?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Word game, Ruzzle.
Word game. There you go.
I mean, you have 3 times 1 minute, and after every minute you see an ad, right?
Yeah.
And plus you have the banners at the bottom, etc. I mean, it drives a lot of revenue because it's a very, very, very high retention game. So then people won't spend much money on such a game, but they will stick with it a lot. And if you can then find good spots to place ads, you can make a lot of money.
I always think of it, there's a few metrics to look at when you're trying to determine that. And one of them is, what is the retention? If these people are coming back forever and ever, you're going to be able to surface some ads of various types. And then there's how much is the currency valued is a good indicator of whether or not you can use rewarded video in a way. And then what is the retention, or sorry, what is the frequency of use? So are they playing 5 times a day or just once a week? And that might also determine if they're willing to sit through various types of ads. But yeah, it seems like there's still a good place for even the banner ad. Okay, great. So maybe if you guys could talk about now, whoever wants to jump in, we think about using ads and leveraging the technology that's out there. There's 100 ad networks out there. There's a lot of technology. What are your go-to partners, whether it's for mediation, ad networks, who's doing well for you, and what would you recommend as far as newer developers who are just getting into this space? Who are some of the names they should be looking at?
When it comes to mediation, there are a lot of players out there, the likes of Fiber, HeyZap, the likes of Supersonic. We've currently tested a few of those, and from our perspective, it seems like there's one particular one out of those 3 that has the most robust technology. But at the same time, that's us, and that's kind of what we found in their technology with our requirements for our multiplayer game. So for anyone that goes and looks at mediation, which of course conceptually makes sense, right? You have a technology that feeds, that looks at all of these networks and finds the best ad for that user, for that country, for that game at that time. It seems conceptually to work brilliantly. The reality is ever so slightly a little bit more difficult. But the important thing is that you speak to these partners and you look at them in terms of their commercial offer, but then very specifically make sure that you vet them from a technology perspective, and that they genuinely do what they say they will do. And as a rule of thumb, when you speak to mediation providers, whatever they say they will do it in twice the amount of time, and they will deliver half of the things they promise.
Well,
sounds about right. Yeah. No.
Yeah. We work with mediation platforms also. We think it's good and it's nice because that way you don't have to deal with all the providers that are integrated in it, and it saves a lot of time to you, and also they have built the technology, so in some certain way the waterfall that they have is the best one in each moment for each player. So this is something that we rely on, and also the cost of building it in-house, it's quite high because you know the team is limited, the time is limited also, and if the team is working on that, they're not working on features and the main things of the game. So on that sense, mediation platform works pretty well. We tested some of them also. We're working with Fiber, TrialPay, and Supersonic Cat, depending if it's on Android or on iOS, because the performance is not the same on both platforms. And basically, it's very important and crucial the contact with them, and that they have a good account management, because at the end, it will save you a lot of time. And they can even let you know which are the best practices of the sector that you might know. And yeah. Basically, that's all.
I won't add something very new, but maybe highlight from Wooga experience 2 points that Pete and Albert mentioned. So at Wooga, we started with our own mediation platform for video and interstitial like 2 years ago. And we come to the point that it requires a lot of time and a lot of development, and we accepted, not accepted, but we concluded that it was not our business, and that was a better idea to give this mediation part to people who are expert on that. So regarding video, so it was a bit to highlight Albert's point. And then regarding video mediation specifically, so we discussed with the main actors of the market, to Supersonics, Fiber, and highlighting what Pete mentioned about being sure that it's not easy to implement a mediation platform. It's technically and business-wise, it's quite a long process. So, I will highlight the point of having a very dedicated and very reactive account management team. And so I think that's a very important point. And we decided to move like 6 months ago to Fiber, and so far we are very happy with them. So that's it for us.
Yeah, I mean, I usually try to recommend to the smaller developers, you know, you're a developer, you want to develop, you don't want to really focus on these kind of things. And if you make $100 per day from ads, sure, you can, with some sophistication and a lot of hard work and learning and everything, you can probably increase that, maybe double even. Will that kind of make you rich and famous? No, it might be rather the case that you say like, okay, you know, once I have critical mass and once I'm doing, I don't know, $5,000 per day from ads, then is maybe the time to actually look at, okay, how do I now optimize my advertising revenue? I mean, taking the example from Russell, I mean, initially, yeah, we made some very good money from advertising when it all went big, and then only we started looking at, okay, so how do we optimize this? Is there a mediation platform around? That was beginning of 2013. So things have changed since then, and they always constantly change. But at that time, it was then looking at mediation and seeing like, okay, how can we now from the revenue, if we can increase this by 40%, yeah, then it makes real sense to actually also have some dedicated resources against that.
Right. And now, how many? Let's say you're either doing your own mediation, where you're doing the code yourself, or you're using a third party. Then you've got various ad networks that you're going to use as part of that system, which there's some integration for each one of those, though then mediation kind of takes care of some of the communication between them. Let's say you've got a game of medium scale, you know, I don't know, something over 100,000 DAU. It doesn't have to be millions of DAU. How many ad networks do you think kind of helps you get to that optimum point without spending too much resources? Is it, 3 covers you, 5? Do you think you can get away with 1? I don't know. What's your perspective on that, Albert?
Actually, we're working with 5, as far as I remember now. But basically, I think having a waterfall where you can choose, and it's better basically for 2 things. One is the inventory, because if you work with just 1, then at the end, if you have a lot of users or a lot of requests, depending also on the number of videos that the user may watch per day, the inventory runs out. And then it's a bad experience when the user tries to watch a video and there's no video available. So from that side, you're covered. And also, there are many providers that have good eCPMs or provide good revenues. So it's better also to have many of them. So that way, it's also kind of a good competition between them. So if you just have 1, they will always do what they want. Instead, if you have several of them, they will always reach or fight to be like the number 1. So that's a way we think about it, and that's the way we're doing it.
I like that point about good competition between the networks. As an ad network myself, we know that we're going to be in the mix with a few other networks in a mediation system. And us, we particularly focus on brands, like you're familiar with from TV ads. And the good news with those ads is that they pay out very well, really high eCPMs. But they're a little bit less consistent. Like during the holidays, we've got tons of ads, and then on January 1st, all the brands go to sleep for a little bit. And so in that situation, it's great for, to use mediation, because maybe that day we don't happen to have as many ads as we usually do, but then the next provider does. And then when we're back with really high eCPM ads, the system will choose us first. And it keeps us on our toes, and when people are shaking us and saying, where are the ads, we'll do everything we can to optimize for, whatever the most important partner is, or to help with a big launch to make sure that everyone's happy. So don't be afraid to annoy your ad networks all the time to make sure that they're doing the most
Dan,
they can.
where are my ads?
You are no. I don't even know his name. No.
I think it is a very important point, because you can start with 10 or 15 different networks, but that means 10 or 15 different relationships and people to bug and email in San Francisco and Asia, and with that comes quite a lot of people time that you maybe don't want to invest in, especially in an early stage, right? So mediation is a very new industry. It's a very young technology, maybe 2 years old compared to web ad serving, which is nearly 20 years old now. But as a rule of thumb, if you start with 5 and then call them every day, your CPMs will go up. That's my advice.
And it's when it comes to choosing our partner, it's a question between on top of what they say, a question between eCPM and fill rate and country by country. So obviously you can't probably, as Pete mentioned, you can't manage 30 networks to be sure to have the best network in the US, the best network in Mexico, the best network in London, in the UK, etc. But so it's always a trade-off, yeah. And but what we try to do at Wooga, we have maybe between 5 and 10 networks. It's always this balance: best eCPM, so usually it's with brand network, and fill rate, which is usually coming from our performance provider. And we are trying to cover also our main market, which are obviously which are for us US and Western Europe.
Okay, so, switching gears, actually related to trade-offs, question for you guys, if anyone wants to comment. What is your philosophy on whether or not you'll allow competitors' games to be advertised inside of your game? Because traditionally, someone is usually willing to pay a lot to advertise their game into a similar game because they know it's a well-targeted user. So you might get a higher payout for that, but you might lose your user. Where do you guys stand on that? Whoever.
We do it because right now we don't have a choice, especially when you come to some of the larger titles that you were looking at. With incentivized video, the brands and the agencies in the USA, for example, are still too slow to catch on to that as an opportunity. So for now, when it comes to the networks that we work with, for example, at Colony, Flurry, they generally work with other gaming parties that then buy incentivized video on our games. And then, interestingly, slowly but surely, more brand players are coming out of the woodwork, including, of course, HyperMX. And that I see changing significantly. In addition, we're working very hard to design a way for us to be able to run our own branded campaigns. And in the case of Miniclip, we have a rich history of brand advertisers on miniclip.com. So leveraging those relationships to get direct deals in with players such as Lego, Mattel, and Hasbro would make a lot of sense for us, even if that means taking money away from you guys. So when it comes to kind of the next 12 months, we are very much hoping to move further away from gaming and much more so into branding, with the simple reason that we're then driving people to brands rather than our competitors.
Basically, I agree with Peter. Well, we're not against showing ads of other games. Well, only if it's a case that it's a game that is in the same category as ours.
No other dragon games? Not allowed?
No other dragon games. But it's but if it's another game, we're not against it, because at the end, if your game is good and people are like willing to play, if not because they will see another game, they will leave. So if you trust in your game and your potential, you shouldn't fear about that. But it's true that, first of all, we would try to, and we want to work with more brands, because first of all, they have higher eCPM, and as Peter said, also the probability that they will leave to another game is lower.
Yeah, I mean, the same brand is key since last year for us, and we want really to move forward on that direction. That's why we are focusing on finding partners who are focused on brand like HyperMX. And then, as we can't fill everything with brand, you have to accept competitor. So what we do, basically, we block our direct competitor, and then we try to find other gaming company who could have the same audience as our game, but which are not direct competitor.
How do you block those? Do you just get in touch with the partners?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I was previously at Flurry and had the experience of, we would blacklist certain companies for other companies. It was relatively manual and didn't always work, perfectly, and I think that's the case with all the networks. But if you bug your network enough, you could ask them to not show specific games or specific genres. Thinking outside of your own games for a second, just thinking about kind of implementation of ads and building them into design, kind of getting back to that. Do you guys have any games you see in the market right now that you think do a really great job of integrating ads in a way that finds that sweet spot that we're talking about? Any examples that people should download right now and check out later today? Or do you only play your own games?
I'll give you two. One, there's definitely no SweetSpot, but it's excellent in terms of both monetization from in-app purchases as well as advertising, and that's Kim Kardashian. And I think what's interesting as well is that you should also be able to look, because they are a public company, as to some specifics around that. So if you want to analyze that, that could be quite handy. But then the real game changer for me was Crossy Road. That's an absolute gem, and how those guys have done that is fantastic. It makes my job a lot easier, because it's very much an example of how it should be done.
And I'll just, regarding Kim Kardashian, we work with Glue on their Racing Rivals game, which also is very well implemented for video ads. The fuel that the cash that you need to keep racing, you can earn very quickly by watching ads, and they'll allow you to watch many in a row. And there's a nice theater setting for watching them. And they do something nice, which is, after the ad, you usually get 150 cash or whatever it is, but sometimes you get 2 diamonds or 1 diamond or 3 diamonds, and so there's a little bit of that slot machine element to it, keeps people guessing, and their metrics as far as views per DAU are outstanding, and as a company, yeah, they're going pretty high as far as percentage of revenue coming from ads that you can see in those reports. I think it's well above 20%.
Yeah, I think I said that earlier. I think it's crucial to find really from a game design perspective some good spots. I mean, something like what you just said. So if you have a gacha element in your game, you know, that might be the way to actually. People love gacha. They love this moment of surprise, this treasure chest, whatever. If you can give them another opportunity for watching a video, I'm sure loads of people will do it. And you need to find those good spots that fit to the game, that don't interrupt it, and that actually give the people the feeling like, yeah, hey, wow, I can get so much out of this if I just watch a video, and these kind of things. I think that's going to be really important, and that's where, you know, there are then suddenly companies that make, you know, $10,000 a day from video ads and these kind of things. Yeah, it can be done. You have to just find the right spots, and you have to find the monetization loop or something in the core monetization loop where you feel like, okay, this I'm going to reserve, maybe, so to say. For
Is there a placement within your own games that you guys feel has worked really well, or anything you've experimented with?
In our case, well, first did the implementation in Dragon City, and then we did it on Monster Legends. It's true that in Dragon City is the main game, but Monster Legends is also good, and it's better implemented on that game. What we did was like to find the sweet spot. Is like we put it on the map. There's kind of a cinema, and the cinema has a light, and when there's a light, the user is able to watch a video, and when they watch a video, they get one gem, which is the hard currency. And when the light is off and the cinema is like off, then the user knows that there's no video available. And so this is a good way, we think. It's not intrusive at all, because the user can click if they want, but if they don't want, they don't need to click. So you know the user, and if the game is good and you have events in the game and features that people may like, the user will go there and click on it. You don't need to make them go, but they will go in for it.
Yeah, you know, one thing I've noticed a lot with developers, if you only put the opportunity to watch the ad in the store, you lose out on a lot of opportunities, because most players who've decided that they're never going to pay, they don't visit the store, so they don't see that opportunity. So there's ways to surface the opportunity either up in the main menu or the occasional pop-up, but you get a much higher rate of views. So looking ahead, 2017, let's say we're right back here, ambulance is coming by, we're starting another panel, same crew right here. What are we going to be talking about that's different? You know, things have evolved a lot over the last few years. Video's really taken hold. Mediation has matured. 2-3 years from now, what will we be talking about, or what can we have put to bed?
I think the whole technical stuff about mediation will be mostly behind us. Obviously, things will probably improve, but most of the game developer will have mediation platform as part of the technical integration, and people, which is starting, but people will more and more thinking about design and how they can very early in the game development think about video rewarded, and I mean, the discussion is always to push a video, the best way to make money without harming user experience, and to make your player happy. And I think we are just, generally speaking, starting to work on that.
I think finding strong partners in those markets that we all see are growing massively right now when it comes to smartphone penetration. So you think about Brazil, you think about the markets in Asia. That's where a lot of inventory growth is going to come, and finding the right partners to work with perhaps some of the cultural differences that may come with that is going to be some of the things that we might be discussing in 2017. Then, of course, there is going to be privacy. I attended a session yesterday about COPPA and COPPA compliancy, and there were about 20% of the people of you were in that room, which was really worrying because, of course, children and privacy and advertising in the gaming industry is an absolutely enormous thing. So I think that's going to be something that, as legislation in Europe catches on to what's happening in the US, that will be things that we will all be talking about, and particularly who got the latest big fine.
Anyone else? Hello?
I think we won't necessarily have that problem of having competitor video ads as much in there, because the prices will continue to go up, and it means that there will still be some inventory, but it's going to go more and more and more towards brands, because they are looking where people spend their time and where they are willing to engage with a brand, and that's where they will be. I mean, those kind of ad formats will be much more efficient than a TV ad. I would say that probably even, I mean, we're talking about second screen. I think the second screen is actually the TV these days already. So the first screen is actually always closer to you.
Yeah. Cool.
Also, apart from what they said, I think we will also be talking about more segmentation. So the offers and the video ads that are shown will be more targeted to the user. So that way, it will increase probably the revenue, because it will fit more the needs of the user, and also it would increase the game experience, because they will. It's not just only because they will watch a video so they get a reward, but they just go to a video and they get the reward for the game which they're playing and they like it, but they will also get something that is interesting for them, and I think it will go towards there.
Right. Cool. All right, I'd like to open it up to questions. If anyone out there, yes. Oh, and I guess we'll have microphones brought up to you here. So hold on 1 second. Right.
So it seems right.
Yeah.
Okay. As if your strategies are very much advertising strategies very much work in harmony with IAP with you guys. We have a game that is entirely ad supported, and we've kind of struggled with how to shoehorn in IAP. And it might be that it might be more difficult. And I'm just wondering how your strategies might change if you had to be a strictly ad-supported strategy, as far as like use of interstitials, like you're struggling with, and things like that.
Just leave it on.
I helped a few word game companies, and there it's really very hard. Actually, the only thing that they did was, offer people to have an ad-free experience for paying like $2.99 or something like that. So it's, main revenues, 80–90% almost is coming from ads, and you have to then, be smart about how you kind of dial up, so to say, on if you have you need to then have extremely high retention, and then you can with a good amount of interstitials, display, rich media, sorry, video, you can still monetize well. If your retention is low and you're fully ad supported, it's going to be hard to just get the number of impressions to kind of make it viable, in my opinion.
Down here.
Michael from CA Media. When doing in-app advertising and talking about optimizing in terms of eCPM and so on, how do you see the importance of doing targeting info together with the ad request? I mean, like standard user demographics, gender, age, and so on. Because I feel like many developers is kind of passing that option and doing just ad requests more or less blindly. I mean, ad networks seems to completely stress the importance of this targeting issue, but is it really that important?
Particularly when it comes to the gaming space and incentivized video within the gaming space, the ultimate conversion is someone downloading the game and then buying something within that game. And many game developers don't necessarily care that much about who it is that they are targeting, as long as their metrics are about the right level of retention, the right level of spend within that game. That will change, especially when we start looking at brand advertisers. Absolutely. And then with that comes the additional headaches or inconveniences of doing things like brand surveys and understanding pre- and post-campaign uplift of campaigns. But again, all of those things will start to come because all of those things happened when it comes to online web advertising. But it's a while off still, I think.
Yeah, I think there's still some work to be done as far as ad networks getting really good at the targeting, and on the brand side at least, the brands are just starting to get used to spending big budgets, and mostly they value reach. You know, a lot of times, hey, I need 1 million people to see this ad in the next week before Black Friday. Go, you know, and they're not as sophisticated as the UA side of the world with games and apps, but they're going to get there like they did on the web. And they're starting, you know, with us, they you know, maybe half the time or a third the time we get requests for like, hey, can you do this kind of targeting? If I targeted to this, what kind of reach can I get? And quickly, you know, a lot of times when we tell them, well, if you're only going to do this, this, and this, you're only going to reach this many people, then they'll say, well, we'll bend that a little bit because we have this higher level goal about views. But that's going to change over time. The good news is, as a game developer who's allowing those ads in your space, if you allow that kind of targeting, and as this matures, you're going to get paid even more for it. As a very extreme case, a company like Purina will pay something like 50 cents or $1 to run an ad to someone that we've confirmed owns a pet and is a female within this range, right? Whereas the normal payout might be 3 or 4 cents. So that's where eventually it's going to head, where you got like micro targeting, and as long as a developer you allow that extra step of allowing your user to be surveyed really quick, do you own a pet? Yes, boom. Then you're opening that up, and maybe you've already passed along if it's a male or a female and what age group they are. So we don't have to ask that question, we already know, but we've got one question left we have to ask. So brands are more demanding, but they'll pay for it. So that's I think where it's going to head in that direction. Yes, sir.
With the advertising dollars coming out of brand advertisers, how do we get over the issue that our DAU audiences are global? How do we communicate that to the media agencies and the brand advertisers? Because that seems to be a sticking point for delivering campaigns that they understand.
So you're asking for how do we get global brand campaigns across your games?
Yeah, I guess, Sour Patch Kids in the US don't really care about the UK market, but my games have an audience that is global. So, there's a lot of impressions that are going to waste. So how do we get over that problem as a game developer?
Knowing your game and serving ads into it, I wish we were serving into all of your territories. For the brands at least, we're not quite there yet, because brand sales are done on a country-by-country basis. So if our company, we're based in New York, we largely work with Madison Avenue US advertisers, and let's say we get the Coca-Cola account in the US. Well, to get Coca-Cola Germany, we need to be in Germany because they've got a different ad agency, a different creative, different targets, different budgets. It's essentially an entirely different company. Whereas when you work with a game company to get their advertising, Social Point's going to advertise from Spain globally in one place. And so you're able to get that. So it's going to take time for companies like us and our competitors to open up offices in each one of those places. So I think it's kind of a 2 to 3 year thing before we can really nail the whole globe.
Is it going to require you guys to set up offices in different places, or can we have some kind of display mediation, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mediation, you'll see that there's a company kind of similar to us in I believe it's Germany, called Teeds, that is brand focused, formerly known as eBuzzing. And they similarly have an issue where they're very good in one place, but not in the U.S. And so if you were using them and us at the same time through a mediation partner, you're solving that problem at least to some degree. But it's still pretty early stages for what will eventually become a very normal thing, which is brands everywhere on mobile.
And I think it also is about third-party tracking. So we're working with Fiber right now to see how we can implement third-party redirect. So it's not necessarily our ad server that identifies that this user is in the US. It's their ad server that does that. And that would then help overcome any media buyers' concerns about that.
Other questions? All right, going once, going twice. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you guys. We'll see you next year.